No noise, no fluff, just real talk and fresh perspective. You're listening to the Pulse Check Podcast. Let's get into it. Hold up, wait a minute, Mr. Postman. Yeah.
Well,
You don't know that meme?
meme?
Yeah. Hold
I know
up,
the song.
Wait a minute, Mr. Postman.
I know the song.
That's a song?
Are you trolling right now?
I didn't know that was a song.
You're just like these kids, man. All right, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's finally made it through the last audition weekend, you know?
Yeah. How involved are y'all with those?
AJ and I, at least, are there with Dr. Dabo through all of them.
Kind of sit in on them.
Mm-hmm. Read our comments and things like that. But it's good. It's great experience. Definitely glad to get that experience as a doctoral student because this is the last step.
Yeah.
But man, it's after a long Monday through Friday. There's nothing like waking up at whatever time to get back here on Saturday morning. So, but it's about finding the silver lining. It's not bad. It's just, I get spent, man.
No, yeah.
By the time I make it to Saturday, I'm like, all right, let's see how I can survive one more. The sixth day of the week.
Yeah. I also realized we sit in on them too with Dr. Parks. And I didn't realize, man, like a typical audition day, like you're sitting there, you're listening to the same instruments. I mean, it's even we're listening to more instruments than most.
Mm-hmm.
Like you gotta love what you do to teach.
I'm telling you. I mean, even something as simple as like really sitting down and focusing to listen critically and write remarks about the performance is like a skill.
Yeah.
I wonder what that's going to look like for our generation because we have shorter attention spans.
It's going to be terrible. As a matter of fact, I think hot take.
Oh God, already?
Nah,
go for it. Go for it.
It's not a hot take, but
okay.
I think repertoire, modern rap, contemporary rap, is going to start getting shorter and shorter. I think, and honestly, it should. It should because if we're wanting to expand the audience, right, beyond maybe the typical classical audience, I think being able to put repertoire out there that's a little bit more digestible, not from a stylistic perspective, but kind of from a attention grabbing perspective, like shorter pieces of music. I mean, think about it. All the music that people listen to are going to be, the majority of what we listen to are, kids are going to be listening to like Instagram Reels, TikToks. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where they're more exposed to music. Mm-hmm. A little bit less radio, CDs, like record players. It's not that anymore. So the longest they're going to hear a song is like 15, 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. So imagine, us trying to get people to listen to an hour and 15 minutes of Brahms' Requiem, which was really good last night. But, in 20 years, kids aren't going to be able to sit down for a 45-minute concert.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking like contemporary music. The problem with the term contemporary is it's so all-encompassing.
Yeah.
So like, even like because saxophone is such a young instrument, marimba.
Yeah,
very young.
Percussion in general is young.
So like the breadth of repertoire that's available is so wide in scope. There's some contemporary music that totally misses for me.
Yeah.
And then there's other music that also is in the contemporary time period that have elements of maybe an older time period or not.
Yeah.
But they, have more aleatory techniques, but they're still really effective at what they do. I think it's more about like how effective they are than length. It's like the thing about music is that contemporary music I feel like is like, and I could be very wrong with this, but I feel that it's about like sensationalizing like the things that we experience every day. Yeah. So like someone can write a piece about like brushing your teeth and just like the process and like what these sounds in the piece reflect in that process.
Yeah.
How effective or not it is subjective.
But it's the material. It's something that's easily relatable. And I get what you're saying.
What I struggle with is contemporary music that's written about food.
Why?
I just don't think it works because you can't convince me that this sounds like this food or this sounds like this how this food tastes. It's just two totally different sensations for me. Now, if you bridge that with having the food available for the audience, one, I would go because free food.
Yeah, for sure.
But two, I think even if there is no connection with or without the food, now you're like not imposing. You're kind of imposing a connection between the two, even though it actually doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
But now, if you write a piece about spaghetti, like, and you have spaghetti for the audience, every time they eat spaghetti, they're going to be like, "Oh, I remember."
They're going to think about that piece.
Yeah,
which is kind of. It's kind of weird.
It's weird.
That's a weird approach.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, more people will go because it's food.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, but I don't know. I do think it depends on the piece because I think some contemporary music is just too long, man. It's like, man, this could have been 5 minutes shorter and it could have been much more effective than the extra 5 minutes of material.
Yeah.
But some works, you know, the length is appropriate. You know, I don't know.
I don't even think it's a from a attention span perspective. I think even compositionally, things can be shorter and still be as effective. I've heard a lot of pieces, especially like lately in the percussion ensemble rep. A lot of them are really, really good, and some of them we play here. We were talking about this the other day, but some of them kind of go on, kind of not for the sake of being longer, but you know, once some certain ideas and techniques compositionally have been put out in the piece, you know, at some point you kind of have to put a bow on it rather than trying to, you know, repeat the same material over and over again. Now in a different key. Now it's the same, you know, especially the more tonal it is, the easier it is for people to get sick of the same melody, if that makes any sense. That may be a little too broad.
I mean, sometimes people will say, you know, even in like atonal music or things that incorporate just a wider scope of techniques than tonal music often does, they'll say, oh, well, there's still melody in this. In some cases there is.
Yeah.
But I think it can be more difficult for the listener to latch onto a specific theme because it may be like superimposed with the super advanced like compositional technique that's totally going to go over, you know, the head of someone who's not trained, or it may not. You never really know. But I don't know, these are things that I think about when I even program music because, you know, I'm always thinking about the listener's ear. And it's not, I feel like I have a good balance of programming for not only in ways that serve all of the music that I want to play, serve the listener's ear and considers like their attention span with that, but also like my personal fulfillment, which is it's really hard to do all three of those things.
Yeah.
Some people just program for personal fulfillment and like slam your ear.
Yeah.
For like an hour, and it's like, oh, that was so heavy.
Yeah.
You know. Then there's like people who only program for the crowd, and it feels like the program doesn't connect well or have depth or like it doesn't have weight.
Yeah.
And then there's like, I don't know, people who only program to serve the music. You could have a program that connects really well piece to piece, and it doesn't connect with anybody in the audience. I don't know. So it's a really difficult balancing act.
I think one thing we can learn from. I think film composers have this figured out. Film composers really, because they can instantly connect to memory, nostalgia, especially if it's related to some type of theme, some type of theme that relates to a character. In that way, they can relate to just simply like how textures and certain chord progressions make you feel, because you know they've kind of been, whether people realize it or not, they've been hearing them in movies for years, or TV shows or whatever. Like, you know, the first thing you think when you hear a whole tone scale is some type of, you know, going into a daze or like a flashback. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. Like different things we've just kind of become used to in music and don't realize it.
Yeah.
And they kind of play off personal memories. They play off stories. I just think that they've figured it out a little bit more. And how they use melodies and themes, some composers have got this a little bit more than others, but instead of 45 minutes of, you know, here's this theme, here's this melodic idea repeated. Maybe it's in a different key, maybe it's in the same key, but, you know, a lot of them have figured out how to take that theme. Maybe you hear the chord progression from the theme as the movie goes, and then 20 minutes into the movie, you hear an augmented version of the theme.
Yeah.
Right? And some people don't realize that they hear it. It's kind of a hidden gem in a way, because people that know music and are familiar with the themes, one that I can think of is like Interstellar, right? That's like simple melody, like the cornfield chase melody. It's really like recognizable, but in certain scenes, some different things happen to it, and it's easy to hear it, and it jogs a memory from previous parts.
Right.
You start to relate it to characters,
which is the point.
That's the point of what we do. That's the idea of music, is that it's supposed to invoke some type of feeling and emotion and memory, and sometimes that gets lost in the journey just to kind of make art happen.
Yeah, and I think that's why I say like contemporary music is, to me, a lot. It has a really big focus on like sensationalizing like things that we experience in our life. Maybe as an attempt to like force that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it always works.
You can't force it.
No, it just has. It's such a natural thing.
Yeah. Especially if society is going one way, you can't then be like, unless, you know, I feel like you can't completely cut it and be like, well, we're gonna change the way people think, unless it's so impactful and profound. Which, to be honest with you, you know, I don't know how many pieces about, you know, sirloin steak or whatever y'all are playing over there. I don't know how impactful.
It's not doing it for me. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. It's a good thing we're talking about this, because none of this is even the topic we're talking about today.
It just shows you and you that we have a range. You know?
Wow. Let's talk about some things from the last episode.
Yeah. We got a lot of positive response and reception, so shout out to you guys.
Yeah, man. I mean, you guys are, you know, sometimes we do things and expect to gain momentum as you go and get better at it. Which I kind of knew that a lot of people in not only in the College of Music here, but kind of in, you know, colleges of music across the states, different places. I feel like this is something that, you know, as podcasts become increasingly more popular, that people would appreciate, not just from us, but just in general.
Yep. People
telling their stories.
Yep.
You know, especially people that, you know, look like us. You know what I'm saying? And there's you know, a handful of people doing that thing, but I didn't expect people to kind of, for one, you know, show much interest in it, kind of based on the topics that we're talking about. You know, people, you know, that we see every day know us and are excited that we're doing this, but it was a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
people were kind of very interested in what we were talking about, rather than just that we were talking about something, you know,
which was really nice. It's always nice to get that sort of affirmation, but even like that feedback.
Yeah,
you know, and just ways we can make things better, which is, you know, that's kind of my life mission. Like, I just love people that love me enough to tell me what they think I can do better to even get me to a higher level.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's like one of the most considerate things someone can do for me. So like, you know, just hearing what people thought about it, you know, whether it was good or bad, was really fulfilling, you know? and whether they enjoyed it or not, and everybody did.
A lot of people did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I like doing this, and I think that's one thing that me and you are pretty good at is, yes, I think it's important to show confidence in what you do, and both of us are confident players, rather confident in the way that we carry ourselves, but we're not too proud to accept criticism and get feedback from people and just grow, which is a huge reason why I think we're kind of here in this place now.
Yep.
Is you kind of have to be have to be okay with doing things and being able to put yourself out there in a way, and learn from it and grow, which is why I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know that, Kaylin McGarry was worried about seeing our faces in the podcast. I didn't know that until I get her feedback.
Get your mics out of your faces.
She's like, I don't even want to see the microphone.
Thank you, Kaylin.
I don't even want y'all to use microphones. Why don't y'all just talk without microphones? Why are you recording it? I don't want to hear.
She's gonna flame you when she hears this.
That's fine. That's fine. We love Kaylin. Kaylin's a good friend of ours.
Kaylin plays bassoon on Instagram.
She does. Kaylin plays bassoon on Instagram. Go give her a follow, man.
Give her a follow. Run up her numbers, if you will.
W ratio.
You're pushing it now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not really funny anymore when you do it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, man. Let's get to it, man.
We're diving into it.
Today we want to talk about performance. We want to talk about performing as a soloist. We want to talk about performing as a collaborator, and I think let's just dive right into it. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about from either lens, from a collaborative perspective or even a soloistic perspective, was how our repertoire choice has changed from our early days in music to now.
Yeah.
And what were some of the reasons why that we think that change happened, and where did that lead us to today?
For sure.
So lead us on the way, Big B.
So I thought about this a little bit, and I think this is a good way. This is a good way to go about it. I don't think I realized that I was doing it until I'd gone through different stages of education and had a little bit more control over the rep that I was playing, rather than doing a bunch of pieces and etudes and things that were given to me for educational purposes and technique building and things like that. But I kind of think that you have to go through 3 stages, right? The beginning stages of your playing, which you're kind of playing pieces that are given to you for the sake of building technique, things like that. Then you kind of have in the middle stage, you're kind of in the intermediate level where you're kind of choosing pieces that are kind of in line with what's kind of expected at your skill level. That either it's the same thing for educational purposes, but also you're starting to find out what things as a performer you're good at, what pieces you connect with. At the same time, pieces that challenge you as a player, and once you've kind of reached a certain level technically, that there's not really much in the repertoire that you won't be able to execute. Mm-hmm. Then I think you start to think a little bit beyond that in that third stage, and that is programming, having some type of diversity in style, diversity in the composers that you're programming. Diversity in your own playing, mm-hmm. right? Showing that I can play something that's a little bit more technical. Don't get it twisted. I'm still Matthew James.
Tight beat.
But I can also play something that's a little bit more. I don't want to say melodic. That's a bad word to use.
Lyrical, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. You're not just one dimensional so you're showing multiple dimensions as a thinker. Mm-hmm. You're not just programming, the dead white folk.
Yeah.
Which,
it's easy to do.
It's easy to do. Mm-hmm. And with our instrument in the repertoire, with solo rep for percussion, I know this is true for percussion, and I would imagine it's kind of similar for you. The rep is so new, the instrument is so new as a solo instrument family, that most of the composers are alive. Mm-hmm. We're starting to see more diversity in the the representation of different races and ethnic groups of the composers, but we can all still do a better job of showing diversity in our programming, all the way from an individual level to to a larger scale, professional groups, academic, quartets, things like that. But I think I break it down in 3 stages, and I feel that the better I've gotten as a player, the more I can start thinking about how effective the program is, rather than how good I'm performing certain pieces. Because to some extent, it gets to a point where we get the point.
Right.
Most people at this level are going to be playing really well. Mm-hmm. It's just how thoughtful are you in what you're saying through the pieces.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, before I forget, to add to your point on just diversifying the type of repertoire you're playing, whether that be by virtue of the instrumentation or by virtue of the composer's heritage. If you want to check out a resource, there's the Institute for Composer Diversity. Mm-hmm. I used to be a research fellow, and I helped with the chamber music database, which was a really neat opportunity. I got to research just anyone I really wanted to find and just add to the database myself. I used to work with Rob Deemer, so shout out to Rob. It was a very special year that I did over there. I did it virtually, so. But I got, for me, I just was really interested in learning about, Jamaican composers. I had never heard of a single one, so I was just, looking up their music, seeing if there were any performances of them, contacting the composers to see if they were interested in being included in the database, which was just a cool thing. So if you want to check it out, go ahead and check it out. It's a great resource. There's a research fellow team, that all works to just continuously update it, so it's very fresh. And there's a nice search engine so you can look for pieces by certain categories and things like that. And there's even a guide of how you could, proportion your program. So there's a lot of data on there too. Check it out. But I would say for me, early musicianship, my journey through that, it was just kind of by virtue of solo and ensemble, playing a 5, playing a 6, playing a 7. And then undergrad was a little bit different. I do agree. I mean, it's pretty standard, you have a professor pushing you through a certain stair-step model of repertoire that's just pushing you, that checks certain boxes that push you to develop certain pedagogical skills. For me, I kind of I didn't really formally study until my master's, so I did my best to find those things and program for certain reasons, things that I was not very good at, mm-hmm. or things that I was not good at, and so that was tough because it included sometimes you have just repertoire that includes techniques that you have no clue how to play. Yes. Before I could do all the weird sounds on the saxophone and I looked at it, I was like, man, I'm going to really work on it. I get the music, plop it down on a stand. I have no clue what to do. As I got into the masters, it sort of started to change, and I was still programming based off of things that I couldn't do, but then I had a lot more free reign than I was expecting. And that was difficult because I had no clue. I knew obviously you want to be really good at the instrument, but I didn't really have an identity about the type of music that I like to program and what I connect with. And I think that's where a lot of that experimentation started to happen. And here, a great bit of my study with Dr. Dybel has been about just meaningful programming and serving the music, programming in a way that serves the music. Mm-hmm. And really just making sure that all connects to what you value as an artist, which has been so important for me at this stage. And I'm still figuring some of that out. I'm thinking it's easier for me to program recitals now because of what I spoke about earlier. But I'm imagining one day when I want to do an album, mm-hmm. That's going to be such a journey, just figuring out what I want to be on that record, and it's exciting. Because it's a lot of self-discovery, but I do listen to a lot of repertoire now, and I'm I don't really like this anymore. Yeah. I have a playlist called my RTC playlist, Rep to Consider, and I have one on TikTok because I see classical sax people post stuff. I have one on YouTube, and like Spotify and everything, and then all of them have different things. But I go back and I look at things that I added in like 2021. I'm like, this doesn't really scratch the itch for me anymore.
Yeah.
And it was so jarring. And I remember like going into my lesson with Dr. Daiwa. He's like, yeah, it's gonna happen. You know, you're just not gonna. As you grow and as you mature, like some of our repertoire, it's not going to speak to you because, you know, whether it's just pure flash or whether it's not, you know, it could just not hit anymore. So I think that's where I'm at with that right now.
Yeah. Dr. Parks actually talks about the same things. His perspective, especially coming from the recording side of things, is he doesn't really lose interest in a lot of things that he listens to over time. He just finds he's learned how to find new things in it that he hasn't heard before, in order to not let that thing get boring. Especially from the lens of playing. If you're playing a piece of music, or conducting it or coaching it or something like that, say for instance you put it down for a while, you come back to it. That's always exciting for me, because it's not really the same. It's not the same piece of music as the first time, because you're not the same person. And I think that if we're always conscious of who we are and how we're changing over time, then we can kind of guide the decisions that we make as far as programming to kind of fit the things that we're interested in and what we believe, and also, like, you know, maybe do some things and a little bit outside of that you may not realize you might like till later, which is, you know, it kind of brings up the next point. But did you have anything on that?
I was actually just going to ask you if there was like a collection of music that you like now that you didn't used to enjoy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Okay. Maybe not genre specific, but I was really not into like mixed chamber ensemble music, especially on the more modern side of things. Things that focused a little bit on, you know, extended techniques. I wasn't really into that, because when I was growing up, I was just learning the sound and how to maximize the sound of the instruments. And so whenever I started hearing things that weren't really specifically characteristic to it, I started to think to myself, well, that's not marimba, right? Or that's not timpani, that's not vibraphone, right? So I don't really like it as much.
Yeah.
But the more comfortable you get and the more familiar you are with the techniques on your instrument, like the more interested you become in trying to see if you can make different sounds and, you know, explore the capabilities of the instrument itself. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, over time, being in, mixed chamber ensembles, most of the time I was the only percussionist. I'd gotten so used to being in percussion ensemble. Percussion was my default sound. Like, making the marimba sound like a marimba in the context of a marimba quartet is not difficult.
Right.
Right? You just have to hit the instrument the same way other people are hitting it, and it sounds the same.
Right.
Right? Now, you have dynamics and there's nuance and things like that. But playing a piece where you're playing marimba with a flute player and a bassoonist, and they're playing, you know, multiphonics or something, right? And you're somehow having to replicate that on the instrument. That may not be the best example, but you can't think like a marimbist.
Right.
You can't think like a percussionist.
Right.
You have to work on, you know, trying to somehow, now, you know, differences in timbre, they work, right? If you have a mix of timbres and maybe somehow figuring out how to make the characteristic sound of the marimba blend well with other things. But some things like articulation, length, note length, you know what I'm saying, sustain, how other instruments sustain, you have to kind of change the way that you are doing things on your instrument, all the way down to maybe the implements that you're using. So at first I wasn't down with that. I'm like, no, I want to do this the way that I learned how to do it.
Yeah.
Because it sounds better. And it wasn't really until later, once I got a little bit more mature and played a little bit more, you know, mixed chamber ensemble pieces and, you know, figured out how to make my instrument sound like other people's instrument and how to make them sustain and do different things. That's when I started becoming more interested in the repertoire, right? Playing different pieces, like some of Viet Quang's pieces, which are, we're working on one of those now, and other composers. Molly Joyce has been one that I've really liked to check out. There's one piece called Less Is More that I really dig, and there's a lot of other ones too. But I think I've enjoyed pieces that make you not think about your instrument as it was created to sound like, and I didn't like that at first.
At first, or previously, when you didn't like it, did that affect your enthusiasm when performing it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Because at first I was like, this is out there. This is not. This is like not percussion, right? This is like this is the out there far art, Fluxus, goofy performance art stuff.
But do you think that's exclusive to this type of music, though?
That feeling.
Yeah, like that enthusiasm. Like you can't. Have you ever heard a piece from another, like I don't know, maybe a more classical style piece that just doesn't do it for you, and you're not performing it as enthusiastically? Or does that specifically happen with contemporary music?
No, it's for me. It was that
Contemporary music.
It was that then. I think I there were pieces of course I just wasn't as interested in because they didn't resonate with me, and they weren't necessarily contemporary music. Like sometimes, like Schoenberg wasn't as hip really until I started. Once you started learning music theory and thinking about the compositional tech, you learn to appreciate it. Maybe you're not going to go listen to it,
Right.
but you learn to appreciate it.
Did that affect how hard you were going to try, though?
No.
Okay, so that was just a contemporary music thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have the same experience. Like, I have some pieces that are in our repertoire, especially quartet repertoire, that, like, you cannot convince me is good music. Like, there's this piece that the quartet did last year. It's called The Jig. I think that piece sucks. Like, that is a visceral reaction. Like, I hate that piece.
You hate it?
I do not like it.
Well, let's listen to it.
No.
Well, let's pull it up.
No, man. We're gonna get copyrighted anyways. But
No, we'll just mute it out.
oh,
Yeah,
true,
yeah,
true,
cover
true.
your ears. Hey, cover your ears.
But no, it's like especially like this theme set on like this Irish jig, and like it's like really happy go lucky, and I just don't like the piece, man. Like maybe it's like playing it, but also I mean people love it though. It's a real like a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
I just can't stand it. But I will say, the quartet, we played it for competitions, and so that never affected my preparation.
Oh, because that was motivation enough.
Sort of. I mean, in my mind, I always thought about this as, well, if I get hired for a gig, it doesn't matter if I like it or not.
Yeah.
It's money.
Yeah.
And that might be a starvation mentality, but I just think it's more of like a professionalism thing.
Yeah.
The quartet appreciated it. They told me one time, they're like, we really like that. Even though you hate this piece and you dunk on it all the time, you really try hard, and it doesn't make a difference. And I'm
That's
like,
good.
Cool.
That's a good. I think that's a good compliment.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, how about this? 5 years ago, 3 years ago, would you say that you would have still done the same thing?
Yeah.
You would still be the type of player that, regardless.
Yeah, I'd put my best foot forward. I won't like it.
Yeah.
And that will never change. But I think maybe it's like a personal thing. Like I push myself to do things that I don't necessarily want to do all the time. So like, it just kind of felt like it's another opportunity to play something. So sure, I guess
You grow from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard a quote one time. I don't want to misquote.
You're already gonna do it. You may as well say it.
No, I don't know where the quote was from, so I don't want to quote like Dean Queen. It was something like in order to grow, do something every day that you don't want to do, or something like that. And that's, or maybe it might have been something along the lines of do something every day that makes you uncomfortable. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Do something
Yeah.
every day that makes you uncomfortable, and you'll learn to grow from it. And I do think that's true. And a lot of the times, and I noticed this with a lot of colleagues, not so much here, but in my journey, that they stick to what is comfortable as far as playing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If there's something that I'm good at, for example, I may be a little bit better timpanist than I am a marimba player.
Mm-hmm.
Would I be doing good by practicing timpani a bunch and playing timpani a bunch in ensembles? I'd become a better timpanist for sure over time. But I'd grow more as a player if I played marimba more. Now, I love playing marimba, but I feel like there are certain things we don't want to play, we don't want to practice every day, that sometimes we stray away from doing it because it makes us feel uncomfortable. Either sometimes we're not really down for an ego check when we practice. Sometimes we practice stuff that we are good at because it makes us feel good.
Right.
Instead of practicing stuff that we're not good at and hitting areas that we need to grow in an attempt to get better long term.
And that's the danger of flavor of repertoire. You never step outside of that box. So that's something I try to avoid as much as I can because, I wouldn't say I'm the most technical player.
By far.
But, yeah. Yeah, hey, I already know game. But, I try to play a lot of technical things to compensate for that. But if I think about this differently, because I'm a really good or what I would say I can sound good, and I can interpret phrases well. I could just play lyrical music all the time.
Yeah. And
there's a bag for that somewhere. But I don't think there might have been a period of time where I did things like that, but now especially I'm nah, we gotta get the technique going. You know
what I'm gonna do?
What?
I'm gonna clip a piece of the mezlenka that we played.
Yeah.
The fourth movement.
Yeah.
I'm gonna clip that right now in the video.
The video be yo, this guy's a liar.
They just watched that. I just clipped that in just so you know.
So
the one that he's like, I'm not the most technical player.
No, that's gonna be good. But you know what though? Another thing that I was thinking about that you said, this is so tangential, but percussionists, you guys really do take playing all the instruments seriously, and there probably are people who specialize in one.
Well, hold on.
What?
Most of them don't though.
Really?
Most of them don't. And should I say this? I'm not going to say this like this, but lately I've had opportunities to step out and kind of see what the average percussionist at a lot of these schools are doing. There's a lot of people at a lot of places that are really good at their thing. As a matter of fact, sometimes some of the best in the world at their thing. Their one thing, maybe I was talking about with timpani. For example, I may be the best timpanist in the world and cannot play snare drum at all.
Right. That makes sense.
That ends up being that's starting to be more of the norm than not.
Okay. Interesting. I had that perceived wrong then because I was just about to draw a point to saxophone players who will say they're a saxophonist but will not play tenor or bari. And they have the equivalent of they won't sound like maybe a middle schooler or a high schooler, but the things that are characteristic of a person who really has put in the time on those instruments, they won't be able to do. And the problem with that is when you get hired for a job, we're talking about a university job, you're not getting hired to teach soprano, alto, saxophone.
Yeah.
You're getting hired to teach all of them. Whereas I think for percussion that functions a little bit differently because when you get hired to play in a full-time orchestra, you're getting hired as a timpanist? Question mark.
Timpani and percussion is a separate thing. So timpanists will always just play timpani.
Right. So you're getting hired for that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I mean, I guess that is more justifiable. I feel.
Yeah. Maybe I used a bad example.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, but that's the goal. That's supposed to be the goal.
Okay.
Even though sometimes we fall short in achieving that, that's a little bit more on the educational side because we have teachers that are the same way. Although that they're really good and they might have gone to schools that are very highly regarded and prestigious and gotten away with doing their one thing.
Yeah.
Because they're so good at it.
Yeah. You know, I know it happens very often. Actually, I just don't agree with it.
Yeah,
I don't agree with it, especially from a teaching perspective. But I don't know.
You're not going to see that a lot here, though.
Right.
Because Dr. Parks.
I guess that's why I felt that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's a. I don't want to say it's rare here, but Dr. Parks is really good at. We just talked about this the other day. Taking your strengths, refining them, yes, but also elevating your weaknesses to where they're somewhere in the same level, you know, or maybe even better than your weaknesses are now become your strengths. Every player here, I feel like, has been able to do that. I mean, I've like, you know Austin Palella?
Maybe.
But
not sure.
He was, I think he did 8 years in Commandant Zone. In March, did snare drum. So he's very much a solid drummer, rudimentally orchestral, like really good snare drum player and drummer in general. You would not know if you watched him play marimba. Like his marimba playing is incredible, right? And you wouldn't think that watching him play marimba, he did rudimental snare drum and he did other stuff too. He wasn't just but you wouldn't think that wasn't a strength of his, right? So here we kind of try to do that with.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and it's rare. It's not as common anymore. And I'm just gonna say it honestly.
What?
Seeing some people at other schools play lately. I'm not gonna say just looking around, looking on social media. That sometimes people just get into their own niche within the field and just stick to it. And everybody wants to put out videos of them playing pieces that they play really, really well, but nobody wants to put stuff that they're bad at out there, or they don't want to. They're not willing to check their ego to work on those things and let it be bad for a little bit in order for it to be good later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not to toot my own horn, but I mean, I feel like.
Oh my God.
I don't know. I feel so comfortable in like the things that I'm bad at. Like I don't.
You're one of those.
I am.
My biggest flaw is that I love too hard. I work too hard. My biggest flaw is that I'm ultra critical of myself. My flaw is that my weaknesses become strengths.
You're cooked, bro.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just I don't know. I've always felt pretty well. Maybe not always, but like I've posted so much on Instagram of myself playing over the past 5 years that like I am not afraid of it. Yeah. I don't know. Like, but I do. There is the culture of like people like curating and doctoring the most perfect video to put on social media.
But go ahead.
I don't know. I just think. This has nothing to do with what we wanted to talk about, but it doesn't matter.
Bro, who cares, man? Who cares?
No, I'm just
saying. They want to know. Look at them. They're looking right now. They want to know.
Yo, this is gonna be the best meme ever. Little B's gonna clip it. One of the undergrads in my studio, he's a great player, and he's so enthusiastic about what he does. And he posted a video of himself playing the other day. And I think somewhere in the caption he said he was like gonna delete it, and I was like, no, don't do that. Don't do that, because who cares about the person that's like sitting behind the screen looking at your your whatever you posted with a score and be like, hey, he didn't really do that well. You know, like, don't let them be weird. You know, it's less about impressing people and more just about using it as a space to interact with others, to connect with someone else. You know, like the amount of people that I've met in the field and learned from just based off of like me putting myself out there in a clip of myself playing, whether it was good or bad, most of the time it's at least okay, you know, and like having someone shoot me a DM, give me some thoughts, some things, new things to try, or like a professor being willing to like give me a lesson, like a one-off lesson, you know, and now we formed a connection. And like if I was afraid, none of that would have ever happened. And I think like some of that culture, the perfection culture, sure, you know, wanting to farm like engagement and like putting the most perfect product so that people perceive you out there, people perceive you a certain way, you know, that does happen, but that's inevitable. That's just like a humanistic element in everything that we do that social media just exacerbates, but it is not exclusive to social media.
Yeah.
But I found a way to connect that to the next thing.
I don't know why I'm doing this.
Do you have things that you are trying to consciously exhibit as a performer? Mm-hmm. Like we're talking about like your performance profile. Like this could be like your poise, you know, like the kind of like aura you exude or lack thereof.
We're incorporating these Gen Z terms.
You know, aura did not have this connotation before, like TikTok, like aura farming.
They
kill everything.
They kill this.
But what does that look like for you? You know, and what do your favorite performers exude?
Well, my favorite performer is Michael Barrett. Mm-hmm. He's professor of percussion at Eastman. And the thing I like the most that he has is the ability to bring you into the space, right? And that sounds sounds very cliche, but even playing with somebody, sometimes it feels like it doesn't feel like you're connected. And as a performer playing with him and watching him, mm-hmm. you always feel like you're a part of it in mm-hmm. a way. Mm-hmm. In some performers, you don't. You feel like, okay, I feel like I'm watching somebody play a piece.
Right.
Rather than being a part of the performance. I am in this story that this player is trying to tell.
Yeah.
I'm in the story, right? And I'm getting to watch. I'm not only watching you tell the story, I'm in the story also.
Right.
And he has the ability to do that. And there was this video of him talking about performing in general, and I wish we could link this. We should probably link this.
Click the
we should link. Actually, we should link a lot of the stuff that we're talking about too.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That'd be a good idea. But in the video, he's talking about performing, and in the preparation process, you're very zoomed in, right? You're really focusing on articulations. You're focusing on accuracy, note accuracy. You're focusing on, character. Mm-hmm. And once you've worked on those, and you start to zoom out a little bit. You start to think about the performance as a whole.
Yeah.
And what effect you want to have on the listener and the audience member, who your audience is, and how you want them to feel when they're listening to the piece.
Right.
And that requires a whole nother set of performance chops, right? Separate from physically playing the instrument. Most people never get past that point.
Right.
Even though they may maximize their technique on the instrument, no matter what the instrument is, some people never get past that point. And their performances end up being
vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are what they are. Somebody playing an instrument really, really well.
I think it's so easy to get to that point though. You know, like I said earlier, like my perception of self is I'm not the most technical player. Someone who sees me play might say otherwise, but I have always felt a sort of deficiency in that way. So I've always tried to overcompensate by playing things that make me burn, you know, and what that ended up doing at one point was totally removing my ability to play horizontally. And even now, I think I'm still playing, I still have, there's so much left to be desired in that part of my playing, I feel, but I think that it's so easy to misconstrue mastery with whatever that is, like putting yourself in the hyperbolic time chamber of playing every single scale known to man. In which case, I think it's easy to misconstrue the idea of becoming a master of music with the master of technical proficiency.
Yeah.
And so
that's good. I get.
Like really look like when Stephen Banks came here. I think I might have talked about this on the last episode, but Stephen Banks is like one of the saxophone players in this generation, and he came here, and I was just like opening a room so he could like rehearse, and I just had like time to like pick his brain, like take corners that didn't make sense, so I'd have more time to talk to him. And I asked him, just what his experience was like, and he I don't remember exactly how we got here, but he told me that he's like, do you think that I still practice F sharp major thirds at like 140? He's like, I absolutely do not. But he said the way that I like get myself to conceive playing these really hard technical things is making it a line of music. And now it's about a destination and not, okay, if I take this fingering here and this fingering and then this one, it's not a combination of like button matching like Super Smash Bros. Yeah. It's about how is this part of the phrase directing me to the next thing, which is ultimately what someone who thinks about serving the music is considering. Yeah.
That's good. Dr. Parks calls that, he calls that chicken vision versus eagle vision, right? Because chickens, when they're running around, right, their heads are down and they can only really see what's in front of them. And then, eagles see everything from a higher perspective, a higher view. Right. And you kind of have to do both. But if you're able to take something that you see at this level, right, at the micro level, right, while you're working on it, think about what happens from the zoomed out lens.
Exactly.
And you're able to approach what you're doing to it at the smaller level with that in mind. Yeah. You'll find more success in doing
it. Which is really what the book Sound in Motion is about. Do you remember us talking about that in Dr. Large's class?
I think so, yeah.
I've read at least the first 90 pages.
Well, that's the second time Dr. Large mentioned. All right, the third time she's got to come on.
I know. We got to get her on. Well, actually, I finished the book, but on my second read-through, which is when we were in her class, I got like 90 pages in. And I know Kaylin has we've talked a lot about this concept, but just like perceiving a scale as like degrees between, of course there's like 8 notes, but like if we're thinking about like how to like actualize a crescendo, giving each note a numerical value between 1 and 10, and that's how you kind of treat it as like a phrase, as opposed to like, I don't know what even the alternative would be. Maybe just not thinking about how the minutia connects to like getting you between 1 and 10. Sometimes people will start at 1 and realize that halfway through the scale they need to build to 10, and the last 4 notes are like 6, 9, 10. And it's like, okay, how about we like meter this out a little bit more, and that book teaches you this like more pragmatic and like actualized approach to phrasing. And I like that for someone who's like brained like me, like really good at math, because it gives me like a tangible way to just associate like a value to something. Yeah. But that is a way to like do like the eagle eye with the chicken eye, and just like, I don't know, it really gives you like the full reins to kind of do whatever. As long as you're thinking about something that works out. Now, if you can do all that and still not thinking about where the phrase is going, and it's totally ineffective.
Yeah, then you're just, you're just
doing stuff.
You're just doing weird activities with the music, and it doesn't. You're not really applying. You're not applying anything to it. I don't know. I think that one thing I've gotten better at, and honestly, within the past year, is when you first get your hands on a piece of music, doing that right away. And it kind of comes with score study, listening, studying in that way. But I think even when I don't do that, I've done a better job of, okay, I've got 20 bars of this hard lick or something, whether it's in a solo piece of music or whatever. What's it doing? You know, what's its intention?
Yeah.
What do I need to bring out? Things like that. What do I want to? What am I portraying right now? What part of the story of this piece is this playing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so before you even hit the instrument, sorry, well, you don't hit your instrument.
Hopefully not.
But yeah, unless stuff's not going well.
My secrets are coming out on the podcast.
Yeah. He crashes out. You crash out quite often. D1 NIL deal.
I agree, though. I mean, I think I've gotten better at that too. With you know, what's the purpose of what I'm playing right now?
Yeah.
You know, like how is it taking me somewhere? And I think like my favorite performers show me that. Like I don't know. Like I went to the Navy Band Saxophone Symposium. I go every year, but 2 years ago, one of the soloists was Jonathan Yannick, and man, this guy is like a technical monster. And you know, normally like music like that actually doesn't really do it for me. I like technique that becomes a part of a phrase, or it's not just strictly about it becoming or being technical. And I'm not necessarily associating that with the piece that he was playing, but that's how I felt with as a first impression. But like watching him perform, like it's so clear that this guy never lost like that fervor for playing. And it was so exciting. Like, dude, like I literally think he was like jumping a little bit while he was playing, nailing like every run. Dude, it was crazy, man. And I was like, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. It was incredible.
That's crazy.
It was incredible. And I was like, man, I want people to be this excited when they see me play.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, you are a boring player to watch. Like, I record myself a lot. And I'll be like, man, like, be more expressive. Like, even if you're trying to direct a phrase to go a certain way, like, you know, show it, you know, in your body language and like, you know, your poise. Like, there's no sense in only playing like this all the time.
Yeah.
You know, because music is about expression. And like the physical aspect of that is also really important.
Yeah.
So these are the sort of things that I think about now. Now, of course, that requires a higher level of like comfortability.
Yeah, you have to be able to do the thing before you start thinking about maybe I'm gonna dance here,
right? Which is, you know, I guess it's an even more important part of like attaining that level of mastery on what it is that you're doing and not getting caught up in the minutia, so that you can be overall more expressive.
Yeah. Well, there's a school of thought, and I think this comes a little bit from I don't want to say old heads. No, this is an old head thing. Thing. And my teacher, Tim Adams, was big on this, and he did not like the way I played for this reason. And I don't feel that was kind of aggro, wasn't it? He did not like the way I played because he felt like, you've seen me play before.
Yeah,
I give a lot to it, and what we do is a physical. It's physical anyway, but I'm very emotional when I play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's my way of getting things out that I don't necessarily do when I'm walking in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Very emotional. I you know, most of it kind of happens here, the faces that I make. You know, it's to him it was very theatrical.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, you know, you're playing all theatrical, but you missed a note there,
mm-hmm.
which maybe I shouldn't have missed that note, you know. Was it because I was you know, emoting in a way? Maybe not. Is that a big deal? Yeah, maybe it's a big deal. It's a big deal if it consistently does it, right? Or if
it's too distracting.
If it's too distracting, or if I've made a decision to do that every time, and that's what's causing it to, like, you know, it's not choreography, and it never is. It never was choreography.
It's just natural.
I'm natural, and I try to be authentic in the way that I play.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, sometimes I don't even play things the same way twice, which is, there's nothing wrong with that because nobody ever sees what I practice.
Yeah.
But he didn't like that. He didn't like that I was, and a lot of older players, not trying to poop on my old heads, but they don't like that aspect of it. They're very much so. You know, the music is supposed to speak for itself. You shouldn't have to do anything. If you can, and I don't completely disagree with it. If I can make you, if I'm playing a piece about water, if I can make you hear that, I shouldn't have to do anything and move in a way that's too theatrical. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it, but I can see where it's. I can see where it's coming.
The
from.
logic, and I accept that. I receive that. You know, I accept that perspective. I don't know. It's just for me, that is a little too close to repeating the best version of that piece.
Yeah.
And it has no semblance of me in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying arbitrarily creating things that are not written in the score, but, you know, interpretation is interpretation.
Yeah.
You know, and if that comes also with, you know, emoting, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that perspective might change, and that's the beautiful thing about this journey of learning and just hearing the way that more people think about this. Because there's probably a level of that logic because we innately don't agree with it, that we are not understanding. Yeah. Because it is not a belief that we hold ourselves. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a little bit more there. Sometimes it can be too distracting. Like some performers might do a little bit too much of the.
If it doesn't match what you're trying to show. Yeah. And maybe even sometimes if it does take away from what is supposed to be the main focus, then it may be too much.
Yes, I think it's contextual.
I like to walk that line sometimes. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Right?
Maybe not like, you know, if I'm playing something, I'm not like, you know, bucking my head back, doing all that. Although I did that one time. Dr. Parks. It was like, did I mention this last time?
You mentioned something about Dr. Parks.
Yeah, I was like, we were at the Pacey convention and I was playing. Yeah, and I mentioned
it.
He was like, Colin's. We were playing and Colin was twisting his hand back and forward, getting all into it. You had to see it. And he like did it and started dancing and stuff. And I was like, man, it's not funny. It's not funny. I take myself seriously, I promise. But he didn't, you know, he was laughing and joking. And I was, you know, because I didn't realize I was doing it, I took myself more seriously than I was coming across on stage. Yeah. But that to me, that's still authentic. It wasn't really on the other side of it where it's just like I was dancing and missing notes and just trying to be distracting. Yeah. And I feel like if it's authentic, then I think that it's okay. I don't think anything you do will be distracting if it's authentic.
I agree with that. So cool. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Yeah, we're gonna have to do. I think we could do a part 2 to this topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Should definitely.
We'll mark that down. We'll tell admin to mark that down.
Yeah, you know. Hey, would you take note of that, please? Yeah. Go ahead. So we have something new. We have something new for the folks, man.
Yeah, you want to tell us what is it?
Yeah. So we have a new end of episode ritual where one of you lovely listeners leave us questions, and there's no limit, so feel free to leave as many questions as you'd like on either when we post clips on Instagram or if we post like the full thing on YouTube. Leave us a question and we will answer it on the pod at the end of the pod.
And we'll shout you out too.
We'll shout you out.
Give you, shout your name out. We may even shout your social media.
Yeah, give you a little big up in it.
Yeah, we'll get you big up in it.
Unfortunately, I don't even remember who asked this first question though.
Do we gotta pull it up? I mean, we can pull it up. What is this on YouTube?
I don't even know, man. But while Colin does that, the question is, how do you manage a heavy workload / avoid burnout?
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said I was good at managing a heavy workload from a perspective of not wearing myself out and feeling the effects of it later. I'm doing a better job, and even today, I'm having to force myself kind of to take some time and do some things for myself, do some things to get my mind off of it. And the thing about percussion is because you're never really spending a whole lot of time on any one instrument because you have to do a bunch of them, but the grind in general can kind of make you tired. And so I think the biggest thing is finding something else outside of it to help take your mind off of it for a little bit. Right now, we got to practice, and we have to do the thing we're here to do. But I think in order to be more effective in doing it, you have to do something. And I'm talking to myself big time right now. Like I'm preaching to myself. Yeah. You have to do something. You have to do something to take your mind off of it, so that when you come back to it, you feel more refreshed. I was talking to Dr. J in the hallway the other day, Dr. Jimenez, and he was saying this big time. He was talking about there's parts of his day that he protects that is for his studying. And there's also parts of his day that he protects that is for him to relax. And he does it. He forces himself to not do anything during that time. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're a little bit more busy. But every week he's like, I'm not doing anything. I have to protect this. Otherwise, it's gonna wear me out. And I think that's the best way to do it. And so what I've kind of figured out, and what I'm trying to do more, is there's 2 or 3 things that I like to do that I want to start getting back into. In my master's, I love to play basketball. I would play basketball 3 or 4 times a week. And I don't ever really, as active as I was and as busy as I was, I don't ever really feel like I got tired of doing the thing. Mm-hmm. It's because I always prioritized doing something else during the week, and that ended up being the thing that I would do. Yeah. Like I had a friend, me and my friend Jackson Riffle, he's in the percussion studio with me. Every week, 3 times a week, we'd go play basketball. Mm-hmm. And I looked forward to it. And whenever I was done doing that thing, I'm like, gosh, man, I feel better. Mm-hmm. I got some energy out. Now I'm about to go back and go up and practice. Yeah. And I could go up and grind for a long time because I haven't been just doing it all day long. Yeah. And then I got tired of it. But you never get burned. I never got burned out. So.
I mean, that's the hard thing for me, man. And the reason why, I barely listen to music, like classical music, like instrumental music. Yeah. I'm never. Yeah. It's not good. I'll be honest. It's not the best habit.
It's not good.
It's not good, man. But
no, don't say it's not good.
I don't think it's good because.
What, listening to it is not good?
Not
or the music is not good.
I am not spending time listening to music, like classical music or things like that.
That's not a bad thing.
I feel like it is. It might not be awful. It's not the best thing though, because dude, I'm here 6:45 until 7, maybe. It most of the time it ends up being 8.
I don't think that's a bad thing. Because check this out. All right, LeBron James, the best basketball player in the world, second to Jason Tatum. All right, when he goes, right, Steph's dad. So whenever LeBron James, he goes, plays a full game of basketball, maybe the next day he goes and watches film, practices, whatever. Imagine if he then goes home and watches basketball when he goes home, which, hey, he might do.
He might do sometimes.
But when you go home, man, that's your time. That's your time to get out of it. And so he may go home and watch football. And I think that would be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that would be a nice thing.
That's kind of how I've operated because I'm just spending my time engulfed in it all day. Yeah. And music used to be, I always tell people who talk to me, younger students especially who are transitioning into becoming a music major, getting used to that. Music used to be the thing you did after math, reading, science. Mm-hmm. And now it's going to be your source of income one day. That is a really hard bridge to gap.
Yep.
Gap to bridge.
But really big bridge to put a gap in.
It's about, I guess, learning your temperament and your patience with that, and mine is just not high. I'm not driving to the comm in the morning listening to anything that I'm playing right now. I'm not leaving the comm listening to anything I'm playing right now. Yeah. I'm maybe on the weekend. If we just performed and we have a tape, I'll listen to that to analyze it. Yeah. If I'm recording something for someone or for myself and I want to mix it, sure, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. But I'm not, in my free time, I'm not listening to Brahms. No. On my Spotify. I don't have.
Will you ever play Brahms?
No, I won't. Well, actually, I will. Because, we played the Brahms Clarinet Sonata.
That's right. Y'all are thieves.
But, yes, we are. But, I think this has been the 2-semester run where I have been the worst at taking care of myself, for sure. And what that looks like for me is like mostly sleep.
Yeah.
Like I'm really good about cooking for myself and like preparing my food for the week so that when I get to lunch or when I get to dinner, I'm on autopilot.
Oh, that reminds me. You're supposed to hold me accountable.
Oh gosh.
Okay, I'm sorry. Continue. But
no, but you know, I'm good at that. You know, I have my comfort food. You know, like my mental health Pop-Tart at the end of the day, which I, you know, by the time you get to the end of the day and it's so rough, you might even eat like so many of those things, man, or animal crackers or whatever. You know, but when it gets down to like literally like physically sleeping, I have not done good with that. Like 2 weeks ago, I think I had 2 days where I slept for like 4 hours in a row, and it was like literally like physically, like not even just draining is not the word to talk about it. It's not a flex. It's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's not it's not something that is a good byproduct of my hard work. It's actually an unhealthy sort of exhibition of like, you know, what this thing can look like in some way, shape, or form. But you're just trying to do so much.
Yeah.
So you know, there's something to assess there, mm-hmm. whether how effectively I'm able to manage all the things that I want to get done. But you know, like the Masters, I think you just have so much more time in the Masters.
Yeah.
Like I was practicing like 24 hours a week, and then a Sunday I wouldn't do anything. How crazy is that? Just in scope of being able to happen. Like now, this semester I might get a week where I can get like 9 hours uninterrupted, like of like practice time, which is it's so hurtful. But I mean, the key, just like you said, is to find things outside of this thing that we do, because to make a career in music and to make it sustainable, you have to spend more than the 8 to 5 time. And unfortunately, sometimes that means taking work home with you, mm-hmm. which I think has really had a bad effect on me. It's not like I hadn't done it before, but just the volume at which I'm doing it now, like I'm always on, which I think, you know, it's just hard to deal with.
Yeah, exhausting too.
It's exhausting. But it's the gym, you know, like if I don't have the gym to just go and just like, you know, I don't need to scream if I have like an 80-pound dumbbell over my head, you know, because, you know, it's like that's enough stress relief for me, you know, and when I don't have it, I feel it. Mm-hmm. Like when I'm not in my routine of going to the gym, like leaving here and going to the gym, even if that means I get to eat my dinner a little bit later, you know, I just get that release. And it serves the whole that music now being my main thing left, you know, because now it's my health and my wellness, that is my hobby, mm-hmm. you know, and, you know, some people would argue that, because I'm spending time doing that, I'm not serious about music. And I think, you know, that recovery period that you take for yourself and you make non-negotiable, just like Dr. Jimenez said, serves the music making supremely. Yep. You know, and I think like it's so easy to be short-sighted and just gloss over that, and a lot of people do that.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's well said. I think, and we can wrap this up here, I think the best I've ever felt going into a busy week, a busy performance week, the best I've ever felt is when I took some time off right before. And not time off meaning like, okay, I have a concert next week, I'm not going to play this week. Mm-hmm. I mean time off meaning like I've grinded Monday through Saturday. Mm-hmm. Right, Sunday, maybe I'm just gonna do some score study, look at it. Not gonna hurt myself trying to play a whole bunch. Mm-hmm. Maybe I will practice, but maybe I'll practice like an hour or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, forcing yourself to not do it 7 days, 24/7, and give yourself some time to restart and refresh. That next week, it just feels like my battery's operating on 100%, and you just go into it with a lot of confidence. You go into it, you know, feeling better mentally about achieving those things, right? Mm-hmm. You feel like you have space to focus on it, right? You're not cramming just a bunch of information in your head when you're tired, Right? You get to release and think about nothing for a little bit so that you have space. That's one thing that he also said. Give some time for you to mentally take things out of your head. Escape for a while.
Yeah.
And that's what I think these things do. Escape, don't think about anything for a little bit. So that you come in that next day or whatever, when it may not be the beginning of the week, it may be the next day or something, Maybe it's the middle of the week. You come in that next day absolutely like open-minded, free to think, to ingrain information. You have space, you have capacity, you have memory space.
Yes.
You can input a lot of information now rather than just, you ever get those like you use Google. You ever get those emails that are just like you're running out of space on your
Yeah.
I'm the type that I would run out of space and then be like, I can put more on here. Just
But that's what it feels like, though.
Yeah.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah, empty it out, delete stuff. Yeah. Right? No, you don't delete it completely. You don't forget what you do. You don't forget how to play that little 16-note thing in the fourth movement of the Meslenka.
No, you don't.
But maybe you got to walk away from it a little bit.
I still get dreams about that thing, man. That is a tough.
Oh my God! Roll the clip. Roll the clip. Do it. But yeah, I think that's a good thing. Biggest way to avoid burnout is to step away from the heat.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's what the Celtics did a few years ago. They stepped away from the Heat, and the Heat went to the finals.
Oh, not last year, though.
Well,
the Heat last year.
How many All-Stars did you guys have last year?
Who's the reigning national champ, NBA champ?
Who you guys beat, the Mavericks?
Yes.
You want,
They had Luka.
kudos for that?
They had Kyrie Irving. You kidding me? They had P.J. Washington.
Dylan Brooks Light.
Hey,
Come on now,
don't do
man.
him like that. Hey, we'll see, though.
Be
I feel like
for
we
real.
talk about basketball more
We have
than
to.
anything else. I got to do the outro.
Okay.
My name is Matthew James, and you're watching Disney Channel. Well, thank you guys again for tuning into the podcast where we keep our finger on the pulse of what matters most. 2 voices, 1 vibe, and a whole lot to share with the world. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.